They become barricaded subjects? Yeah. So let's say you have a client that comes in here, he's not patted down, she's not patted down, they're not frisked, right? They come in here, and as far as I can tell, they go up to the front to the lady over there, or the person up there, and they'll say, "Hi, yes, my name is so-and-so, and I have an appointment today to see so-and-so." "Oh yeah, come on in, they're expecting you." Right? Because I've seen it over and over again for as many times that we've been doing the trainings here. I step out and I go see. They don't know what I'm doing, but I'm observing them. I'm observing you, right? How many of you see patients on a daily basis and you tell your team? Raise your hand. How many of you go do home visits? Raise your hand. Okay. The rest of you, I'm wondering what you're doing. It's very little participation. When you meet with someone, do you tell your team? Because I remember when we used to work together, we would have discussions on a weekly basis. This is who I'm going to see. This is their progress. This is their decrease, right? They're not doing well. Something happened. And especially with inpatient unit, we had our nurse who would sit down with a doctor and we would get their detail. And Clara, being one of the counselors, she knew exactly where to go and not where to go, because we didn't want to make things worse. How many of you, when you see patients, tell, "Hey, voy a ver a Jaime Castro. I mean, he's been having some issues, but I'm gonna leave my door open. He's been talking about suicide. He's been talking about maybe killing people. He's been talking about frustration and anger." You see how important that is? But if you don't tell your team what you're doing, you're setting yourself up. Now, those of you who do home visits, raise your hand again. Do me a favor. Okay, perfect. Do you talk to your team? Where are you going?
Yes.
Yes. I heard that you have a program that you get in there electronically, and that's fantastic because we didn't have that. But there's something we had back then, and there were notes. Everywhere we went, we had a notepad. It might have not been the best handwriting, but at 1 o'clock I had a meeting with Jaime Castro at this address. At 2 o'clock or 3 or whatever, and it didn't have to be perfect. It was circled, right? I learned that and I took that into my law enforcement career, because guess what? My sergeant told me, "Hey, when you go out there and patrol and you're gonna go do an investigation, you write down where you're at. That way, if something happens to you, at least I look at your notes and say, okay, he went to go visit that McDonald's on San Bernardo before he went anywhere else. And guess what? McDonald's usually has cameras. So I'm going to go see what's going on." But when you go into those houses, you go into the houses. Do you know the layout of that house? That's pretty scary. I mean, for a man, it's pretty scary. And I'm a cop, and I've done home visits, and I've done investigations. Matter of fact, they went last week to go look for a person. And it's pretty scary when you go into somebody else's house and you don't know what's in there. Now imagine you as women, as caseworkers, going in there to help somebody, and you don't know what you're going into. You may be going into what we call a fatal funnel. Do you know what a fatal funnel is? You have it as soon as you walk out of this hallway. It's a narrow hallway, and there's nowhere for you to go, because on both sides you have walls. Your client may tell you, "Sí, pásale," and they take you into the what? Spider's lair. They take you in. How do you get out? Do you know what kind of lock is on that door? Do you tell them, no cierre la puerta, deje la puerta abierta"? O sabe que, ¿por qué no nos sentamos acá afuera mejor, rather than going inside? I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you to override your policies. I'm not telling you that. What I'm telling you is to think smarter, because you become a victim very quickly, ladies. It could be a barricaded situation. You become a hostage, and it can evolve into an active shooter. So I want you to open your eyes and prepare yourself as to when you're going to go do these visits, when you're going to sit with somebody, talk and communicate, have a backup plan. Can you take that to your personal life? Oh, yes, you can. When you go out with your husband, your wife, your children, your mother, whoever it is, even you and your kids, make it a game. Okay, Mita. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go into Danny's, and we're going to sit, we're going to enjoy it, but I want you to tell me, ¿dónde están las puertas para salir? Okay, let's play a game. All right. Okay, Mito, I want you to tell me, where's the bathroom? Oh, that's over there. Okay. Is there an exit? I want you to go to the bathroom. I want to tell me there's an exit. We make it interesting for them. Because you could be at a restaurant. Can it become an active shooter situation very quickly? Yes. You go to Walmart. And you go to the same Walmart over and over again because it's close to your house. Or it's because that's a Walmart that has less people. Or because that's cleaner. Whatever the case may be. Make it interesting. And tell yourself and work with your kids, work with your spouse, work with your wife, whatever it may be. Okay, hey, we need to be prepared. We need to survive an active shooter situation. You see, because we know it's going to happen, we just don't know when it's going to happen. That crystal ball is not working yet. It hasn't been invented yet for that. We don't know when it's going to, we don't know when it's going to happen. We know it's going to happen, we just don't know when. And we don't know where. And yet 150 miles away, we've had that happen in San Antonio several times. How many of you have gone to Las Vegas? I've never been to Las Vegas. Shame on you. Beautiful place? I don't know. But several years ago, several people went to a concert venue to enjoy a concert. And would you have ever thought that was going to happen there? And yet, how far is Eagle Pass from here? Not even 100 miles? About 90? 89? About 120? I'm way off. I'm old. But did we not have a situation like that? Yeah. And it was actually first called an active shooter. But then law enforcement said, oh no, wait a minute, it's not an active shooter. It's just a guy who went off crazy and started shooting people. Who did it have become an active shooter? Very quickly. Very quickly. Not too long ago, here in Laredo, we had an incident at a nightclub, at a restaurant, whatever you want to call it. How many of you go to that restaurant on Jackman Road? I've never been there, but I can tell you it's trouble. And you went there. Were you there that night? No?
No.
Other than that time, you enjoyed it?
Yeah.
Would you go back again?
No.
Okay. Could that have become an active shooter situation? It did become one, folks. Even though he targeted 3 people, he hit each one of those. Would you say he's practiced in the past? Yes. So remember, each and every time you go somewhere, you gotta have a plan. You have a backup plan to help you survive one of these incidents. So can it become a barricaded subject? Yes. The dynamics are going to change completely for law enforcement and for you. You go, you visit a client, you become a barricaded subject. Or you have a patient that comes in here is going to see you. Doesn't like what you have to tell him. Becomes a barricaded situation now, where he's barricaded you and the rest of the employees. The dynamics change for law enforcement. Now we may have a hostage situation. That even changes it even more. He may let some of you go, but he's keeping the rest of you. And very quickly it can devolve into what? An active shooter situation. Or it can start as one and move on. The dynamics change, folks. I can't tell you this and this and this. But for each one of those situations, law enforcement is going to respond in a very different manner. Different to what you expect us to do. Because you expect something from law enforcement, correct? Yes? Maybe so? Maybe? Hello? Yes. I love watching NCIS. Anybody NCIS? I think I'm better than Mark Harmon, honestly. I think I am. I've tried to kind of fade my hair like that. But it doesn't work the way it does in NCIS. It doesn't. Everything changes, and you have to be aware of that. If you look at your notes, it'll tell you 66% of active shooter incidents are over before the police arrive. And I told you that before. So if you had a situation here, who would be the ones to stop the incident? You all. Well, Castro, you're just plain crazy, dude, because I am not gonna go against the person who's got a gun. And yet I'm gonna show you how you can do that by using the run, hide, and fight that we've taught each one of our students, each one of our faculty, instructors, part-timers, from custodians all the way to instructors, to deans, to the president. Run, hide, and fight. Simple things. We're going to show you how that can work. 280 plus active shooter incidents between 2000 and 2021, and that is already behind. These are statistics from the FBI. You can find these online, but they're already behind, folks. And you want to know why? Because yesterday, there was a shooting in a high school. Did y'all read about it? 2 days prior to that, there was another one at a high school. 2 to 3 days before that, there was another one at a college. But I didn't hear about it. Castro, are you making this up? No. But because we all know how the news media works, right? 2 bodies sell newspaper, or 200 or 20 bodies sell the newspaper? What makes news? 20 or 2? 20. So you don't hear about these incidents because maybe nobody was killed, but people were hurt and were wounded. Oh, that doesn't make it an active shooter. Says who? Is it normal to see a man or a person or a student go into a college, into a university, into a school, into an elementary and shoot people? Is that normal? No, it's not. And these numbers are already behind because it's hard to keep up with these incidents. Sometimes when one happens, we know 2 or 3 are right next to it. And for the last couple of months, since December, we've been having active shooter situations in universities and colleges. In a university in the north, police officer and a security guard were killed in an active shooter situation. The subject fled into an island, freezing weather, and I think it was in the East Coast, Northeast Coast. Fled through the water, freezing water, into an island, and he was detained there. When he was detained, they found several weapons on him. He was prepared. He planned it. He was a student there. And yet a police officer and a security died, and they were both very good friends. 2,000 plus people killed according to the FBI. Again, these numbers are already behind. 1,500 people wounded. Again, these numbers are far behind. It's not the FBI's fault. These are the data, these are statistics, they're constantly changing. When I started doing this 10 years ago, at first it was easy. But just as I was doing a presentation, my phone would go off, and there was news of another one, and another one. 21% of active shootings occur in schools. Look at that compared to the businesses. Businesses are 42. 10% are in government buildings. Businesses and schools compete for each other. Why do you think schools are such a high number? Anybody?
Because of the people.
Because of the people, the population? What else?
It's enclosed.
It's enclosed. Very good. Yes. Because when you go into a school, do you not have this big Ghostbuster sign with a gun and a slash? Do we not, as parents, understand and know that there are no weapons allowed inside the school, that the only ones that are carrying weapons are probably who? The police officers. And if you take it a step further back, and I'm not criticizing anybody, folks, I'm not criticizing anyone, but budgets have a lot to do with this. How many SROs do you see? SROs, do you know what SROs are? School resource officers. And they could be from ISDs, or they could be from your local sheriff's department or local police department. And they're stationed inside the school to assist. But sometimes you may have schools that has 1 police officer for a population of what, 2,000, 3,000 students? That's a lot of students for 1 police officer. It's not the fault of the police department, it's the budgets. And I want you to think about those of you who have students right now, in whatever school district you have. When you go to your student, when you pick up your kids, do you see police? I mean, a big presence of police? Do you? No? Okay. Do you often wonder, why no están los policías? Or you don't answer your own questions? I do. I have a daughter that's at St. Mary's, and she's been there since her psychology degree, and now she's almost going to finish as an attorney. And I've always asked myself, hey, where's St. Mary's Police Department? They're there. I know they're there. I just don't see them. Why am I bringing that up? I'm going to bring it up right now real quick. When I dropped off my youngest, when she went to Texas A&M in College Station, I almost had a breakdown. Because I remember when I took her, the first time she was there, I was so proud that my daughter was an Aggie, because her dad was, Javelina, right? They took over. But I was so proud of her. Well, 5 miles from the university, I broke down. I started crying and started freaking out. So I made a U-turn. I was like, oh my gosh, I started calling Cheyenne. Yes, Dad. Cheyenne, I forgot to tell you. Like, Amita, campus carry just started. And it did. Campus carry had just started. It had just become law. And she was in a brand new apartment. Brand new apartment. I loved it. There was control monitors there, swipe cards. Like, I couldn't even go in. It was fantastic. But the walls were so thin, and yet students were allowed to carry what? Their weapons inside that building, because they had a concealed carry permit. And I remember telling her, I said, okay, Cheyenne, listen, if you hear shots, you get on the ground underneath the bed. It's like, Dad, I can touch both walls if I reached out my hands. That's how close they were. Okay, luckily nothing ever happened. But I remember campus carry going into effect. And that was at a university. At the same time, there was already school shootings going on. If you go to your local ISD schools right now, whichever one, they are prepared. Yes, they do the same training we're doing right now. Yes. The students are being prepared as well. Because that's what we're training them. And I'm going to bring that back in a bit. When you come in here, people know that there's no weapons in here. People know that you're not allowed to carry a gun or a knife. Does that make you vulnerable? Yes. So you need to be aware of what to do. Government buildings, 42%. Well, why is there so much inside the government buildings? Well, could it be because people have this hatred and anger towards the United States government? Government buildings? I have 2 officers that work as security guards, part-time government security guards, government buildings. And in the last several years, government buildings, these police officers, these security guards, or federal security guards, have been ambushed, have been engaged in shootings of active shooter situations. Okay? So that tells me that the assailant, the person, is not afraid of somebody who has a gun, is not afraid of somebody who has an AR, because they are fixated on one thing, killing as many people as possible. So do you think they're going to be worried about a small little ISD school? No. When you go to your schools, I want you to test them out. Please don't carry a gun. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I want you to look at their security features, because you're taxpayers. You are taxpayers. These are your children. Do you not want them safe? So I want you to go in there and I want you to look at their security systems. If they're supposed to have a police officer there or a security guard and he's not there, then you have the right to go up to administration and ask them, it's lunch break. Where's the security guard? What's going on? We traveled to a training in San Antonio last week for a gang training. And yet where we were going, it was lunch. And it was an open campus. And students were going in and out. I mean, in and out in San Antonio, major thoroughways. It was crazy. Could one of those students go somewhere, pick up the gun, and make it over here? Yes. Yes. So you need to talk to your children. You need to make home visits to the schools. Make a pop-up visit. See what's going on there. You pay taxes. You have a right to know. Because sometimes things get laxed. And when you become laxed, you're going to have an issue. You're going to have a problem. There's going to be a break somewhere. 75% of shootings last, at least one person knew about it and never said anything. And that's true. 75% of these shootings, people knew about it, but they didn't say anything. We've had counselors, we've had relatives, we've had friends. And when I say we, us in law enforcement, knew that something was going on. I can give you 2 examples. The Las Vegas shooter. People knew, hey, there was something going on with this guy. He was very wealthy. He was not stupid. He was very smart. But he started showing some signs of something going on, and yet nobody said anything. They stayed quiet. California. Male and female active shooters that worked in a residential area for older people. They just started creating this plan. And yet the neighbor, the Mexican national, went and bought them the weapons. And he knew they were planning because he had gone to the house and he had, according to him, he had seen the maps and seen all this, but he never said anything. And yet both of them went in there, husband and wife, whatever you want to call it, girlfriend, boyfriend, I don't know. They went into that residential area for senior citizens on Christmas, preparing a Christmas party, and they did an active shooter situation and they killed a lot of people. They left, they went home to get more weapons, got in their SUV, and they had a shootout with the Los Angeles Police Department, with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, federal agencies. They had a shootout and they were armed, heavily armed. And when the investigation started and it concluded, it turned out that this Mexican national, who was their neighbor, their friend, knew, but didn't say anything. And he became an accomplice. So there are people that know what's going on, but yet either they don't want to get involved, they're afraid, they don't say anything. And that's why some of these things go on, because people don't want to get involved. It's very important, if you have a client, if you have a patient, if you have someone who is starting to talk about this, or a student that tells your son, your daughter, hey, you know, my friend so-and-so and so did this, this, and this, and this. You need to take it upon yourselves to go and talk to administration. Well, I don't want to get involved, Castro. I don't want to get the parents. Okay, can you live with it then if your son or daughter or some other kids get involved in an active shooter situation and become victims? Can you live with it? If you can, power to you. But it can happen, and sometimes it has, and we have record that it already has happened. 85% of school shootings, the gun used came from home. And that's true. 85%. This latest one where the mom and dad, really weird story, right? Then they went in and hid in an attic or whatever. That's a really messed up story. I'm expecting more out of it as they dig along, or once everything's said and done, I watch it's going to become a movie or a book, right? That's really weird. But it's not the first time. Sandy Hook, everybody remember Sandy Hook? Sandy Hook, everybody after everything said, man, this guy was crazy, he was not, there was, in my opinion, working what you all used to do, this guy was not crazy. He planned it. Who bought him the rifle? Mommy. Mommy bought him the rifle, and mommy took him out to go shoot. And how did he repay mommy? Anybody know? He killed her. Pictures that you haven't seen, that only law enforcement has seen, is that this young man lived in this beautiful mansion, right? Beautiful mansion. But he lived underneath, at the bottom. And his windows were all covered in black plastic. The room was a mess. But he killed mommy, and then he goes out to Sandy Hook. So you're telling me he just went crazy and went out there and... No, he planned it. He planned it. And because of that, kids were killed. Adults were killed. Senseless loss of life. If you look at the shooter that was because of the Dark Knight, remember that one? Okay. Now everybody said, man, this guy was crazy. He wasn't crazy, folks. He planned it. He dressed all in black. He matched, he fit in with that dark room, right? Dark curtains. He knew what he was doing. He knew the layout. And he did what he had to do. He went out there, killed as many people, and on his exit route, he had planted weapons. In his vehicle, he planted weapons. The weapons were not just scattered in there. They were perfectly placed because he had a plan. And that I'm not going to give up. I'm going to go in and shoot out. That's what I'm going to do. So you wonder if some of these people are crazy. If you look at one of the pages in the front, and I do apologize because there are some pictures here that are in and out, but you've got 6 pictures of 6 active shooters. Now there's so many, many more. I'm not going to name them. But you look at each one of those 6 pictures on the front page. And if you do a little bit of research on your own, you're going to find out that the first one on the left, Virginia Tech, in his memoir, he said, I'm better than the 2 at Columbine. He wanted to outdo them. And if you look at the way he dressed, he did. His weapons, his knife, he did practice, folks. If you remember the whole incident, he even practiced because he chain linked doors to some of these halls. Do you know why he did that? Why do you think he did that? Why do you think he chained doors?
Nobody could get out.
Nobody can get out or get in. And who do you think he didn't want to get in? Law enforcement. And if you look at some of these doors in that shooting, these doors were metal doors, right? Kind of similar to that one right there, but they had a small little window. Some of them didn't. There were solid doors like that one, and they had that emergency push bar. And so he practiced, and he even made a video where he practiced how fast he get this chains on there and lock them up, because he knew what he was doing. He planned it. And I'm going to go back to that shooting because of the person that I met. The one in the middle, that's the one from Las Vegas. This guy was a very smart individual. He was very wealthy. He had gone to Las Vegas numerous times. So much so that he knew the layout. So would you think he was preparing? Yes, he was. He was preparing for this for quite some time. When the shooting started, you know, there's reports that he was shooting at a propane tank, that he was trying to blow it up. We don't know that. But what we suspect is that he was estimating windage and elevation of these shots that he was shooting to see where those shots were going to be placed at. If you've ever shot a weapon, especially a long rifle, there's called windage and elevation. And at that point where he was at, to that target at the bottom, that's what he was practicing. So he knew exactly what he was doing, because at the same time you had such a loud noise going on with that concert, nobody heard the shots. And yet when the shots started, the performer on the stage, he immediately continued to sing, but then after a while he realized, wait a minute, this is not part of it. He took off. His reaction was to leave. What was the reaction of the rest of the people? Do you remember? Confused. I can even tell you, you probably remember of one particular gentleman who had a beer in his hand and he kept going down, and he's like, what is that? He'd go down again, but not all the way down, and he'd pick up with his beer, because either he was inebriated, he didn't believe what was happening, or what was going on. And yet we had a lot of people that were killed. Even the Los Angeles Police Department, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department were astonished. And how could you engage on a target that's so many feet up off the ground with just a handgun? What do you do, folks? See, we have prepared for an active shooter situation inside. But what you don't know is that instructors like me who are certified in active shooter, we practice, we train others. We had also started to see what? Dynamics of an outdoor active shooter. Could you have one outside here? Oh yes, you can. A perfect building right across the street, right? That hides a lot of people. Could you have an active shooter from there? Yes. We have find gang members, we find